Good morning. Today is August 11th, 2020, and I figured it would be a great time to talk about some of the flowers that we have blooming in our gardens right now. This has been a really fun area for us this year. First few years, we had a very large white pine growing in our neighbor's yard that shaded this area out. We didn't get much growth at all. Well, this is the first season where things have really taken off and we kind of just have let things grow. One of the plants that's popping up in here and typically pops up in first and second year gardens is white snakeroot. Considered a weed by many, I think it's a really, really beautiful white, especially in late summer and fall. This should be flowering throughout the garden until the first frost. It's also known as the plant that killed Abe Lincoln's mother. There's a toxin in this plant that can build up in cow's milk. And back in the day when people were forced to graze their cows in woodland areas, it could create that milk poisoning. Really fun one, really beautiful plant. Here's another really fun one that I think is underappreciated, especially for a woodland area. Although we have quite a bit in here and maybe a little too much this year. But it is called Jewelweed, or Touch Me Not. A lot of people are surprised to learn that this is our native impatiens. It has these really beautiful flowers that kind of hang underneath the leaves. Bumblebees love them. Really, really gorgeous. And when they're done, turn into this super fun little seed pod, which is why they get the name Touch Me Not. And I find it's really engaging, especially for young kids. Just give it a little pinch. The seeds explode everywhere. Love it. This monster here is cutleaf coneflower. It's actually a rudbeckia, so related to black-eyed Susans and brown-eyed Susans. It is absolutely huge. It doesn't always grow this big. In other areas of the garden, it's half the size or smaller even. But another one that does really well in shade. Beautiful yellow flowers that start blooming in late summer. It's just getting going here, and it will go all the way into the fall. It is one of the plants that can really draw in goldfinches and house finches. They really love the seeds. So definitely recommend this for any garden, especially if you want some privacy and a little bit of a shadier area, as long as you have the space for it. When the sun comes out in the morning and hits the branches of the figwort, it just becomes alive with insects, especially small native bees and wasps, a lot of wasps, which are very important for the ecosystem here. You'll see that it's just swarming with insects. These little flowers are really not very showy, but when you see what it provides for nature here in the gardens, well, it's one of the reasons why it's my favorite plant. Another underrated thing about this plant is that in the winter, when the seed heads dry out, they're really gorgeous. And what was once one of the least showy flowers in the garden for most of the winter becomes one of the most interesting things to look at. Highly recommend Figwort, especially for some of those shadier areas in your yard. What I love about the shadier areas of our yard are all of the woodland mints that pop up. One of my favorites, especially this time of year, is hairy mountain mint. It has another white flower, not unlike the white snakeroot, but it really brings in a whole different suite of insects. You'll see that these are covered in soldier beetles right now. And another thing that's notable about this plant is is how attractive it is for the great black wasp, which just flew right by the frame right now, and you'll see a few of those going around. Really harmless for us, although they look huge and kind of scary. Great plant, smells amazing, beautiful flowers. You just can't go wrong. Pieweed, such a beautiful flower, such a bizarre name. It's got to be one of the first plants that people talk about when they show up to our gardens and ask what it is, and it's Katie's favorite flower too. The leaves are interesting, the flowers are obviously gorgeous and huge, the color is beautiful, attracts a lot of insects, especially bumblebees and monarchs. Monarchs love this plant. We have it in shadier areas, in full sun areas, wetter areas, even in drier areas. A couple different varieties of Pieweed, but they all are perfect for a garden setting. We love this plant, and you should get it in your gardens too. Really excited about this one. It's called large leaf aster. It's been poking around in our gardens for the last couple years, but it's never really flowered at all. And this is the first year now, 4 years in, that it's given us a floral show. It's down here. It reminds me of my childhood quite a bit. We had a big colony of this in our woods, and I spent a lot of time in that area running through. I really loved it. I'm hoping that over time we can create a little colony here along the edge of our patio and our garden that will fill out. It's an early blooming aster, so it's been blooming for a little while now, and it should continue blooming for a while longer. Beautiful petals, narrow petals, slight purplish tinge to white. I'm excited about this one. This beauty is elderberry. While it's not technically blooming anymore, you can see that as the berries start to develop and ripen, you get this awesome wave of color. It blooms earlier in the summer, late spring, massive white domes of flower. It's gorgeous, it smells amazing. It's attracting wildlife all year round. Several species of caterpillars, which of course bring in the birds. The berries themselves bring in the catbirds, and me, because they're really delicious. This incredible flower is brown-eyed Susan. It's amazing, and we have so much of it this year, probably too much of it. In fact, I went through and probably removed about half of this just yesterday. You can see how much is still left. It is unique for large wildflowers in a garden space because it's strong and it doesn't flop over like a lot of the taller plants. So it requires pretty minimal maintenance to keep standing up nice and tall. It almost has this perfect shrub form with branches and flowers everywhere. You'll see when you look close, there's a lot of bee activity on here and some soldier beetle activity. It's just a really great plant. It's a biennial, so it'll take a couple years, and they're really, really concentrated this year in our second year garden additions. We can't talk about our summer blooming plants without talking about echinacea, purple coneflower. We're here in our front yard where we have a bit of an echinacea garden. We have several species of coneflower here native to central and eastern United States, and one that is native to Minnesota. Purple coneflower is a garden favorite for so many obvious reasons. It's beautiful, the color's gorgeous, the shape is gorgeous, and it's popular around the world in gardens. This is a favorite of goldfinches all winter long, and The seed head structure, the way it collects snow in the winter, just adds interest all year round. Love this plant. Grasses flower too. This one is big blue stem. It's actually kind of a little big blue stem. We have some much larger clumps throughout the gardens. An iconic tall grass prairie plant here in Minnesota. Can be a little aggressive, so you have to keep it under control. But a really great one. It's warm season grass, so it's just getting going right now, just starting to flower, and will be a presence in the garden through the rest of the fall. This is a fun one. This is called side oats grama. It's done flowering. The flowers are really pretty, little red petals, but it does have great interest throughout the rest of the year now. Great one to have it on a garden border. Just works really delicately with the rest of the flowers. Love this one, side oats grama. We're here in our alley driveway. And this year we've been really lucky to have several native field thistles pop up from plants that we had planted a while ago. It is a biennial, unlike the perennial weedy thistles, and it's native. So it should be kept. It's not nearly as pokey as other thistles are, but it is such a magnet for pollinating insects. It's really incredible. It also brings in a lot of different species of bees and butterflies that we don't see on other flowers in our garden. So this will bloom this year and it will die, and hopefully we can get some of that seed spread around and collect some for other gardens. Native field thistle. This is another really gorgeous flowering grass that we're seeing right now. This is called Indian grass. It's just getting going, and it's going to be a really great plant to have for the rest of the summer and into the fall. Beautiful little yellow flowers right now, and has some really gorgeous seed heads later on in the season. This one's probably growing just a little bit too close to the edge here. It's a taller grass. I like to keep it a little further into the middle of the gardens. But this is a little second year addition here, and I generally like to see what's happening in the gardens for the first couple years before we start to make some of those decisions about where plants are growing. So, Indian grass, gorgeous one, you gotta have it. This little guy is an unexpected surprise. We're still in this little second year edition, so we would have seeded last year, and this is in its second growing season. And we found a plant that probably shouldn't be here. This is called obedient plant. Generally we'll find it in wetter areas in full sun, although it does get full sun here. It's actually a really dry little corner of the yard. So you can see how short the plants are, but they're still blooming really well. And that is really one of my favorite things about planting from seed in a wide variety, because you never really know what you're gonna get. Obedient plant gets its name because you can move the flower petals around and they will stay where you put them, which is crazy, a lot of fun, and people find it really interesting. This is grape blue lobelia. It is a wonderful little flower, relatively slow growing. Started out as one little plant about 3 years ago. I've been nurturing it for this spot since it's just perfect right on the corner here. It's always going to stay relatively small. You can see now that it's clumped out into several different plants, and I think this year is going to be the best year yet. Having that pop of blue in the garden is pretty desirable, and it's not the most common color of flower either. Great blue lobelia. We're gonna end our little wildflower tour with something that's not blooming yet, but since it's just so interesting and such a strong element of our garden at this time of year, I wanted to talk about it. It's stiff goldenrod. It'll be blooming later in the summer and into the fall. It is incredible. It brings in so many different insects. Really, really incredible plant. All summer long though, it has this really amazing foliage, almost eucalyptus-like. Nice, strong, stiff branches, which is how it probably gets its name. Love this plant, the bluish tinge, the soft leaves. Even when it's not flowering, it's really a great visual element. And when it does start flowering, it is lights out. Thank you for joining us today on this little tour, and we'll check back in with you as the flowers start to change and as we get into our late summer bloomers.